The Number Devil, the third night. In time, Robert grew accustomed to dreaming of the Number Devil. He even came to look forward to it. True, he could have done without his know it all attitude and his temper tantrums. You could never tell when he'd blow up and yell at you. But it was better, so much better, than being swallowed by a slimy fish or sliding down and down into a black hole. Besides, Robert had made up his mind to show the Number Devil that he was no fool. You have to put people like him in their place, Robert thought, as he got ready for bed one night. The big ideas he had about himself, and all because of a zero, he wasn't much more than a zero when you got down to it. All you had to do was wake up, and he was gone. But to put him in his place, Robert had to dream of him. And to dream of him, he had to fall asleep. And Robert suddenly noticed he was having trouble doing so. For the first time in his life, he lay awake in bed, tossing and turning. "What are you tossing and turning for?" All at once, Robert realized his bed was in a cave. There were weird paintings of animals on the stone walls, but he had no time to study them because the Number Devil was standing over him, twirling his walking stick. "Rise and shine, Robert," he said. "Today's our division day." "Must I?" Robert asked. "You might have waited at least until I was asleep. Besides, I hate division." "Why?" "When you add or subtract or even multiply, things come out even. What bugs me about division is you get this remainder." "The question is when." "When what?" "When you get a remainder and when you don't. That's what counts. You can tell just by looking at them that some numbers can be divided evenly, right? Like even numbers which all can be divided by 2, no problem. I'm pretty good at threes as well. 9 divided by 3, 15 divided by 3, and so on. It's like multiplying, but in reverse. 3 times 5 equals 15 becomes 15 divided by 3 equals 5. I don't need a Number Devil for that. I can do it on my own. Robert shouldn't have said that. The Number Devil, his mustache quivering, his nose reddening, his head growing bigger and bigger, jerked Robert out of bed. "What do you know?" the Number Devil shouted. "Just because you've learned the multiplication table, you think you know all there is to know? Well, you know nothing. Nothing whatsoever." "There he goes again," thought Robert. "First he drags me out of bed, then he hits the ceiling when I tell him I can do division." Here I come to a rank beginner out of the goodness of my heart, and no sooner do I open my mouth than he starts making wisecracks. "The goodness of your heart," Robert cried. All things being equal, he would have upped and left, but how do you up and leave a dream? He looked all over the cave, but could find no way to leave. "What are you looking for?" "A way out." "If you go now, you'll never see me again. I'll leave you to choke on Mr. Bockel's pretzels problems or die of boredom in his class." Robert knew when he was licked. "I apologize," he said. "I didn't mean to offend you." "Good," said the Number Devil, his anger subsiding as quickly as it had come. "Now, 19. Try 19. See if you can divide it without a remainder." Robert thought and thought. "The only way I can come up with," he said at last, "is to divide it by 19, or into 19 equal parts." "Doesn't count," the Number Devil replied. "It's too easy." "Or divide it by 0? Out of the question." "Out of the question? Why?" "Because it's forbidden. Dividing by 0 is strictly forbidden." "What if I did it anyway?" "Then all the mathematics would come apart at the seams." He was about to lose his temper again, but he managed to pull himself together. "Tell me," said the Number Devil, "what would you get if you divided 19 by 0? "I don't know, 100 maybe, or 0, or anything in between." "But didn't you say when you were talking about the threes that division was like multiplying in reverse? If that's the case, then 3 times 5 equals 15 means that 15 divided by 3 equals 5. "Well, now try that with 19 and 0. "And in reverse?" 19 divided by 0 is, say, 19. 19 times 0, 19 times 0 is 0. You see? No matter what number you take, you always get 0, which means you must never divide by a 0. "Okay," said Robert, "I give up. But what do we do with the 19? No matter what number I divide it by, 2s, 3s, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9, I get stuck with a remainder." "Come a little closer," said the Number Devil to Robert, "and I'll tell you a secret." Robert leaned in so close to the number devil that his mustache tickled his ear. There are two types of numbers, he whispered. The garden variety, which can be divided evenly, and the rest, which cannot. I much prefer the latter. You know why? Because they're such prima donnas. From the very first, they've caused mathematicians no end of trouble. Wonderful numbers, those, like 11, 13, and 17. Robert couldn't get over how blissful the number devil looked. He might have had a piece of chocolate melting in his mouth. Now tell me, dear boy, what is the first prima donna's numbers? 0, said Robert, to get up his dander. 0 is forbidden, the number devil shouted, brandishing his walking stick. All right then, 1. 1 doesn't count. How many times do I have to tell you? Okay, said Robert, calm down. 2, to begin with, because like all prima donnas, it can only be divided by 1 and itself. And 3, or at least I think so. Not 4. They've been through that. 5 for sure. 5 isn't divisible by anything, and so on. Ha, what's that supposed to mean, he said, rubbing his hands together, a sure sign he had something up his sleeve. The wonderful thing about prima donnas is that no one knows their and so on. But no one but me, of course, and I won't tell. Not even your friends? Nobody, never. The thing is, you can't know whether a number is a prima donna or not merely by looking at it. No ordinary mortal can know without testing it. How do you test it? You'll see, he said, and started scribbling all over the wall of the cave and with his walking stick. This is what it looked like when he was through. Now take my stick, young man, and tap every number that isn't a prima donna. That will make it disappear. But there's no 0, Robert complained. No 1. How many times must I tell you 0 and 1 are unlike all other numbers? They are neither prima donnas nor the ordinary kind. Don't you remember what you dreamed back the very beginning? That all numbers come from 1? And then later we saw the need for 0? Whatever you say, said Robert. Anyway, first I'll tap the even numbers because they're all divisible by 2. That's easy. All the even numbers but 2, the number devil warned him. Don't forget, 2 is a prima donna number. Robert picked up the stick, and in no time flat, the wall looked like this. Now do 3. 3 is a prima donna number, but the rest of the numbers in the 3's column of the multiplication table, 6, 9, 12, etc., are not, because they can be divided by 3. When Robert had taken care of 3, the following numbers were left. Now 4, said Robert. No, we don't need to bother about numbers divisible by 4. They're all gone, because 4 isn't a prima donna. 4 is 2 times 2, but 5 is a prima donna. Not 10, though, which is gone because it's 2 times 5. And you can tap all the 1s that ended in 5. Right. Robert was hitting his stride. We can forget about 6. 6 is 2 times 3, but 7's a prima donna number. Good for you, the number devil cried. 11, too. And what others? That, my dear readers, is a question for you yourselves might find the answer to. Copy the chart and go on tapping until only prima donna numbers are left. Let me give you a hint. There are exactly 15 of them in the chart. No more and no less. Well done, Robert, said the number devil, lighting his pipe and chuckling to himself. What's so funny? Robert asked. It's not so hard if you stop at 50, he answered with a quick grin and settling into a comfortable cross-legged position. But what if you have a number like 10,019,000? Oh, it keeps going. I'm not going to read it to you. So it starts here and ends there. Is it a prima donna or isn't it? If you knew how many mathematicians have racked their brains over the issue, even the greatest number devils have come to grief over it. But I thought you said you knew and so on of prima donna numbers. You just didn't want to let me in on it. Well, maybe I overstated my case a little. I'm glad you can admit you're not perfect, said Robert. Sometimes you sound less like a number devil than a number dictator. The more simple-minded number devils use giant computers. They keep them running for months at a stretch. The trick I taught you, taking care of the 2s and the 3s and 5 first, is old hat, really. Not that it doesn't work, but when the numbers start getting really big, you know that there's no end to them. We can make them grow bigger than the universe just by adding, multiplying, and hopping. Now, there are all kinds of more sophisticated ways of doing things, but clever as they are, they don't seem to get us very far. That's what makes them so devilishly interesting. And what is devilish fun, don't you think? And so saying, he twirled his stick with a great relish. Yes, but what's the point of it all? Robert asked. You do ask stupid questions. The world of numbers is never so musty as your Mr. Bockle, Mr. Pretzel makes it out to be. Luckily, you've got me to initiate you into some of the secrets. Like this, for instance. Take any number larger than 1 and multiply it by 2. 222, said Robert. Times 2 is 444. Between the first and the second numbers, there's always, and when I say always, I mean always, at least one prima donna. Are you sure? 307, said the number devil, but it works with gigantic numbers too. Where do you learn these things? You haven't seen anything yet, he said, savoring Robert's curiosity. Nothing could stop him. Take an even number, anyone at all, so long as it's larger than 2, and I can find 2 prima donnas that add up to it. 48, Robert said. 31 plus 17, said the number devil without blinking an eye. 34, said Robert. 29 plus 5, said the number devil, without even taking the pipe out of his mouth. It works all the time, Robert asked, amazed. Why? How come? To tell you the truth, the number devil said, his forehead wrinkling and his eyes looking upward at the smoke rings he was blowing. I wish I knew. Nearly every number devil of my acquaintance has tried to come up with an explanation. It always works. No one knows why. Pretty nifty, thought Robert. He laughed and said, well, I think it's great. But what he really thought was great was that the number devil had told him the inside story. For a while, the number devil had a rather crotchety expression on his face, as he always had when he didn't know quite what to do. But when he heard Robert laugh, he laughed too and started puffing on his pipe again. You're not so stupid as you look, my boy. I'm sorry I have to leave you, but I got a few more mathematicians to visit tonight. I get a kick out of torturing them just a tad. With that, the number devil began to grow thin. No, not so much thin as transparent, and suddenly all that was left of him was a cloud of smoke, and the scribbling on the wall. Then the wall started swimming before Robert's eyes, and the cave felt as soft and warm as a blanket. Robert tried hard to remember what was so wonderful about prima donna numbers, but his thoughts were all white and cloudy like a cotton mountain. He had rarely slept so well. And you, reader, let me show you one last trick, if you haven't dozed off, that is. It works with odd as well as even. Think of a number, any number, so long as it's bigger than 5, 55, say, or 27. You can find prima donna numbers that add up to them. Only instead of 2, this time you'll need 3. Let's use 55 as our example. 55 is 5 plus 19 plus 31. Now try 27. It always works, you'll see, though I cannot explain why.